Ingrid Bergman was the epitome of grace, talent, and beauty. Almost as soon as she arrived in Hollywood from Sweden in 1939, she became a sensation, captivating audiences with her understated elegance, nuanced performances, and striking authenticity, so different from the carefully manufactured stars of the era. But Ingrid wasn't just a movie star. She was an ideal. In the golden age of Hollywood, an actor's screen persona was inseparable from their public image. After portraying saintly figures like Sister Mary Benedict in The Bells of St. Mary's and Joan of Arc, it was easy for the American public to see Ingrid herself as a saint. So when news of her affair with a married Italian director exploded into scandal, the backlash was swift and merciless. The very country that once adored her now turned against her. Hollywood shut its doors. Politicians denounced her from the Senate floor. She was vilified, abandoned, and cast out. But Ingrid Bergman was no tragic heroine. She was a woman of resilience. And she did something even more radical than the affair that ignited the scandal. She refused to apologize. Join us as we explore the extraordinary life, career, and controversies of Ingrid Bergman. From Sweden to Hollywood, from exile to redemption, this is the story of a woman who defied expectations and reclaimed her legacy on her own terms. Ingrid Bergman was born on August 29, 1915, in Stockholm, Sweden, a city rich in cultural life despite the hardships of World War I. The arts flourished under King Gustav V, and Sweden's film industry gained international recognition through directors like Moritz Stiller and Victor Sjöström. This artistic environment would later shape Ingrid's career. Her father, Justus Bergman, came from a musical family but struggled as an artist before becoming a successful businessman. He married Frida Adler, a pragmatic German woman, after a long courtship. Justus's passion for photography made Ingrid one of Sweden's most photographed children. Tragedy struck in 1918 when Frida died of illness, leaving Justus grief-stricken. He coped by filming Ingrid, who instinctively performed for the camera. His sister Ellen took over the household, but her strict religious views clashed with Ingrid's creative spirit. Each summer, Ingrid stayed with her German grandparents, where she felt isolated, though her eccentric Aunt Moody nurtured her love for literature and music. At home, the arrival of young housekeeper Greta Danielsson brought warmth, but her influence led to Ellen's departure. Greta introduced Ingrid to cinema, sparking a lifelong passion. In 1922, a viewing of Victor Sjöström's Love's Crucible deeply moved Ingrid, igniting her fascination with storytelling and Joan of Arc. She attended the rigorous Lyceum for Girls, excelling in languages but struggling with science. Despite her academic success, she longed for a mother's affection. At 9, Justus hired a housekeeper and embarked on an American choir tour, leaving Ingrid feeling abandoned. While staying with relatives, she entertained cousins with dramatic recitations, winning a public verse reading competition in 1925, a sign of her future on stage. Hoping she'd pursue music, Justus enrolled her in voice lessons, but Ingrid found opera dull. At 11, Justus took Ingrid to the Royal Dramatic Theatre, where she was mesmerized by Petrasket. Overcome with revelation, she told her father, "Papa, that's what I'm going to do." From then on, theater consumed her. She staged performances at school and impressed peers with dramatic reenactments. By 13, she became enamored with grand romance, yet struggled with self-image due to her height. In 1928, Justus fell ill with stomach cancer. Determined to shield Ingrid, he sought treatment in Bavaria but returned home weak. Ingrid stayed by his side, comforting him with folk songs. On July 29, 1929, he passed away, leaving Ingrid, just shy of 14, devastated. Grief silenced her passion for performance, at least for a time. After Justus's death, 14-year-old Ingrid moved into Aunt Ellen's strict household, grappling with loss and loneliness. School remained rigorous, offering no solace, and Ellen's attempts to instill religious devotion had little effect. In 1930, tragedy struck again when Ellen collapsed and died in Ingrid's arms. Now orphaned, Ingrid moved in with Uncle Otto and Aunt Hulda, struggling with detachment despite financial independence. Acting became her refuge, transforming her grief into mesmerizing performances. In 1932, Greta Danielsson introduced Ingrid to svensk film industry, where they worked as extras in Landskamp, igniting Ingrid's cinematic aspirations. She set her sights on the Royal Dramatic Theatre School, Dramaten, Sweden's most prestigious acting academy. Despite fierce competition, her natural talent secured her a spot in the 1933 class. Immersed in rigorous training, she quickly stood out, earning early praise from instructors. That year, director Alf Sjöberg cast her in Et Brott, but jealousy among peers led to her removal. Undeterred, she made her stage debut in The Rivals in April 1934. Ingrid soon became romantically drawn to renowned actor Edvin Adolfsson, despite his marriage. Their brief affair was a personal and professional awakening. It was during this time that she met dentist Peter Lindström, an intelligent, stable man who offered a stark contrast to the theatrical world. Their slow-burning romance, encouraged by Ingrid's family, would shape her future. In Swedenhilms, Ingrid fulfilled a dream, acting alongside Gösta Ekman, who admired her ability to reflect his performance with subtlety. Under director Gustav Melander's guidance, she mastered the art of underplaying emotion, a skill that would define her career. As Munkborgreven premiered in 1935, Ingrid balanced growing fame with lingering insecurities, finding solace in skiing trips with Lindström. Though he later downplayed his influence, he became a grounding force. Ingrid's career continued to soar with Walpurgis Night, 1935, where she tackled controversial themes under Gustav Melander's direction. Growing more assertive, she held her ground on set, proving she was more than just a rising star. She was a woman who knew her worth. På Solsidan further showcased her maturity, and as her fame spread internationally, Variety suggested she rates a Hollywood birth. With Garbo absent from screens and Dietrich fading, Ingrid emerged as Sweden's next great star. Her relationship with Peter Lindström deepened, though their visit to Aunt Mutti in Germany in 1936 unsettled him due to her Nazi ties. At a dinner party, it was revealed that Josef Goebbels admired Ingrid and saw potential for her in German cinema. Politically indifferent, Ingrid participated in customary salutes to appease her aunt, though Peter refused. He later criticized her naivety, though those close to her insisted she was never sympathetic to Nazi ideology, just a young actress focused on her career. Filming Intermezzo, 1936, was a turning point. Starring alongside Gösta Ekman, Ingrid's naturalism elevated the film, making romantic clichés feel authentic. Her final scene, gazing through a departing train window, was hailed as a masterpiece of quiet heartbreak. Critics praised her ability to convey deep emotion with subtlety, with one declaring, "She adds a new victory to her past ones." Melander, deeply impressed, wrote, "You lift and beautify my movie." The film's success propelled her toward international stardom. After filming, Ingrid and Peter traveled to Germany, where she quietly accepted his proposal. While he returned to Stockholm, she stayed in Hamburg, improving her German and taking English lessons, hoping to expand her career. Back home, she made her stage comeback in Tim and H, 1937, and reunited with Melander for Dollar, where she received top billing for the first time. Critics agreed it was deserved. Ingrid Bergman overshadows them all. With Intermezzo proving her depth and Dollar cementing her popularity, she was on the verge of something far greater. On July 11, 1937, Ingrid married Peter Lindström in a private ceremony, though press coverage rivaled that of the Duke of Windsor's wedding. Deeply in love yet conflicted, she confessed, "My work meant everything to me, and I wondered what marriage might do to it." Peter, wary of marrying an actress, had doubts but took the leap. Their dynamic reflected a pattern in Ingrid's life, seeking strong, guiding male figures. "I suppose I was looking for a second father," she later admitted. After a honeymoon, Ingrid returned to work, taking on Only One Night and A Woman's Face, where she played a disfigured criminal seeking redemption. Her layered performance proved her range. By 1937, she was Sweden's most admired actress, surpassing even Greta Garbo in a national poll. Meanwhile, Intermezzo reached New York, where critics hailed her as a talented, beautiful actress destined for Hollywood. But before Hollywood, Germany came calling. Germany's UFA Studios, impressed by Ingrid's performances, sought to sign her, with Goebbels personally endorsing her. Though Sweden maintained ties with Nazi Germany, political tensions loomed. Ingrid, pregnant by early 1938, saw her German film Die Wir Gesellen as a stepping stone to Hollywood, not a long-term commitment. Fluent in German, she adapted easily, though the increasing unease in Nazi Germany left her conflicted, a feeling that would later haunt her. Die Vier Gesellen flopped, hindered by a weak script and the Nazi regime's discomfort with independent female ambition. Struggling with morning sickness and linguistic challenges, Ingrid delivered a distracted performance. She returned to Stockholm, giving birth to her daughter, Friedel Pia, on September 20th. The next day, she met with Jania Reiser, a representative for David O. Selznick, who sought her for a Hollywood remake of Intermezzo. After negotiations, Peter secured a one-film deal with options for future projects. Determined not to lose his star, Selznick sent talent scout Kay Brown to Stockholm with orders: do not come home without a contract. By the end of 1938, Ingrid signed on for Intermezzo, earning $2,500 per week, twice Vivian Lee's salary for Gone with the Wind. Preparing for Hollywood, she immersed herself in English lessons, with Brown becoming a trusted mentor. Arriving in New York on April 20th, 1939, Ingrid embraced American culture but struggled with conversational English. In California, Selznick scrutinized her height, name, and appearance, even suggesting she change Bergman to Berryman. She refused. Her confidence impressed him, and he decided to market her as Hollywood's natural star, a refreshing contrast to the industry's artificial glamour. A Spanish-style villa was arranged for her, though Ingrid, ever practical, suggested a studio trailer instead. Filming Intermezzo began smoothly until director William Wyler quit, frustrated by time constraints. Selznick replaced him with Gregory Radoff and micromanaged the production, screening the Swedish version on set and dictating every detail. Despite conflicting directions, Ingrid remained focused, trusting her performance. Cinematographer Greg Toland enhanced her natural beauty, reinforcing Selznick's vision. Though the film leaned into sentimental melodrama, Ingrid's nuanced acting set her apart. After wrapping Intermezzo, Ingrid returned to Sweden, sensing Hollywood was her future. Peter, now her manager, leveraged her rising demand, canceling her German contract without clarifying its terms, ensuring Selznick saw her international appeal. Days after her return, Germany invaded Poland, halting UFA productions. On September 29th, Ingrid cabled Selznick, "My German picture canceled, leaving her options open." Intermezzo premiered in the US on October 6th and was a triumph. Critics hailed Ingrid as a revelation with freshness, simplicity, and natural dignity. Selznick, ecstatic, read the glowing reviews to her over a transatlantic call. On October 9th, she signed her second-year option, committing to 2 films annually under Selznick's control. Restless between projects, she filmed June Night in Sweden, delivering a powerful performance in a dark drama tackling sexual exploitation and societal hypocrisy. With war looming, Peter, now working on military documentaries, decided Ingrid and Pia would be safer in America. On January 2nd, 1940, he accompanied them to Genoa, where they boarded a ship to New York. Selznick enticed her back with promises of a Joan of Arc film, but upon arrival, Ingrid discovered the project had been shelved due to war tensions and Selznick's financial troubles. Instead, he focused on crafting her public image, comparing her to Garbo while emphasizing her natural beauty. Restless and with no immediate film roles, Ingrid indulged in American comforts, gaining 15 pounds while adjusting to her new life. She arrived in Hollywood in early 1940 for a radio adaptation of Intermezzo, and, despite having no major projects lined up, was already a sensation. Hollywood's next great star had officially arrived. Selznick's relentless press campaign over the next 2 years elevated Ingrid to near-mythic status, praised for her freshness and authenticity. Restless, she auditioned for Lilium, a Broadway revival, and won the lead opposite Burgess Meredith. On opening night, her heartfelt performance silenced skeptics, with critics calling her magnetic and a brilliant triumph. She had conquered the stage, proving herself beyond Hollywood's glamour. During the run, playwright Maxwell Anderson promised to write her a Joan of Arc play. That summer, she vacationed with Kay Brown while Peter visited from Sweden. Their reunion underscored growing tensions. Though cordial, their connection had weakened. Determined to move the family to America, Peter left, but Ingrid later admitted the visit had been not a success. By autumn, eager to work again, Ingrid convinced Selznick to loan her to Columbia, for Adam had 4 sons. She infused the role with warmth and realism, elevating an otherwise forgettable film. Next, she starred in Rage in Heaven, a psychological thriller. Frustrated by director W.S. Van Dyke's rushed methods, Ingrid boldly challenged him on set. Initially angered, he later apologized, earning her the respect of the cast. Peter finally arrived in America for Christmas, but their growing differences were undeniable. Ingrid had become independent and cosmopolitan, while Peter remained a traditional Swedish intellectual, still seeing himself as her guide. Unaware that she was outgrowing his control, Ingrid continued to rely on his counsel, not realizing how their imbalance would eventually pull them apart. Determined to play Maria in For Whom the Bell Tolls, Ingrid stormed into Selznick's office, insisting she was perfect for the role. He was already maneuvering behind the scenes, persuading Hemingway and Paramount to consider her. After meeting Hemingway in San Francisco, the author dramatically seized a handful of her hair, declaring it had to go for the role. He signed a copy of the novel to Ingrid Bergman, who is the Maria of this book. Still, Paramount hesitated, first testing Betty Field. While waiting, Ingrid took on Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, 1941. Originally cast as Jekyll's proper fiancée, but fighting for and winning the role of Ivy, the tragic barmaid. Her performance was revelatory. Exuding seduction and vulnerability, she captivated audiences, overshadowing even Spencer Tracy. Her haunting scenes with Hyde, particularly when forced to sing You Should See Me Dance the Polka, showcased raw psychological terror. Critics praised Tracy, but audiences were transfixed by Ingrid's chilling transformation. Though rumors swirled about an affair with Tracy, their relationship remained platonic. Instead, Ingrid secretly admired director Victor Fleming, misinterpreting his affectionate nickname, Angel, as something deeper. While their connection did not become an affair, the experience left a lasting mark, both on her artistry and her understanding of her own creative power. Victor Fleming fascinated Ingrid with his authority and support, qualities she felt were lacking in her marriage. She credited him with unlocking a new depth in her acting during Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Meanwhile, Alfred Hitchcock, eager to work with her, charmed her through private dinner parties. Even Peter, indifferent to Hollywood, admired Hitchcock's intellect. As he prepared to relocate to Rochester for medical school, he arranged for Pia to join him, widening the emotional gap in their marriage. Ingrid, though saddened, prioritized her career, a choice that would define much of her life. With For Whom the Bell Tolls delayed, Selznick sent Ingrid on a summer stage tour of Anna Christie. Though audiences initially doubted her ability to play a hardened woman, she won them over. Her performance, infused with resilience and personal depth, cemented her as a formidable actress. By fall 1941, Ingrid's life in Rochester felt stifling. Peter's studies dominated their home, leaving her restless. She escaped to New York whenever possible, indulging in ice cream and knitting to pass the time. When For Whom the Bell Tolls slipped away to Vera Zorina, she was devastated, telling Selznick, "I cannot stand being idle." Without work, she spiraled into depression. In April 1942, Selznick secured Casablanca for her. Leaving Peter and Pia in Rochester, she returned to Hollywood, unaware she was about to make cinematic history. The chaotic production involved daily rewrites, and Ingrid, frustrated by Ilsa's vague motivations, pushed for clarity. The final script, shaped by her input, turned the film into an enduring classic. Her chemistry with Humphrey Bogart electrified the screen, though off-camera, they barely knew each other. Released in November 1942, Casablanca became an instant sensation, perfectly timed with the Allied landing in North Africa. It won Best Picture, though Ingrid was surprisingly snubbed for an acting nomination. Still frustrated by Selznick's control, Ingrid longed for Whom the Bell Tolls. Cooper and Hemingway, always her advocates, pushed for her casting, and when Vera Zorina was dismissed, she finally secured the role. Arriving in Sonora in August 1942, she embraced the rugged conditions, eager to bring Maria to life. However, censorship stripped the film of Hemingway's political themes, reducing it to a sentimental war romance. Director Sam Wood favored Cooper, leaving Ingrid's performance restrained. Though she earned an Oscar nomination, critics found her portrayal lacking the raw trauma of Maria's past. During filming, Ingrid grew enamored with Cooper's effortless charm, fueling rumors of an affair. Whether romantic or simply admiration remains unclear, but their bond rekindled her ability to feel deeply. The film, however, was a disappointment. As For Whom the Bell Tolls wrapped, Peter tightened his grip on Ingrid's career, gaining legal control over her contracts and finances while dismissing her work as trivial. Friends like Hitchcock noticed growing marital tensions, while Selznick continued shaping her Hollywood image. In early 1943, she starred in Swedes in America, a documentary celebrating Swedish immigrants, before moving on to Saratoga Trunk, a lavish but frustrating production that left her exhausted. Disillusioned, she studied cinematography, convinced she could direct better than Sam Wood. By the film's completion, she was burned out and desperate for more meaningful work. Rejecting Valley of Decision, Ingrid fought for Gaslight, a psychological thriller with Charles Boyer. Selznick initially resisted, but her persistence won out. To prepare, she studied mental illness and befriended a schizophrenic patient, delivering a masterful performance that earned her an Oscar for Best Actress and cemented her status as Hollywood's top star. With no immediate film projects, Ingrid toured Alaska for 5 weeks, performing for U.S. troops despite grueling conditions. Her dedication further endeared her to the public, but the relentless schedule took its toll. In early 1944, she contracted double pneumonia, requiring hospitalization and weeks of recovery. Restless as ever, she spent her days reading scripts and escaping to the ocean, unable to slow down. Her marriage to Peter continued to deteriorate, not from a single crisis, but from growing tensions. He controlled her finances, restricted her spending, and dictated how she should speak and behave. Though Ingrid was Hollywood's top actress, she remained financially dependent on him. His jealousy and suspicions of infidelity added further strain. Raised to respect male authority, she struggled to assert herself, later admitting, "Fear of one's husband is no foundation for a marriage." As a mother, Ingrid's demanding career left Pia feeling lonely. Though they shared moments of closeness, Pia later described her childhood as one of benign neglect. Ingrid's guilt was compounded by society's harsh judgment of working mothers, though male executives and doctors were never scrutinized the same way. Despite societal pressures, Ingrid remained dedicated to her craft, balancing career and personal sacrifice. At the 1944 Academy Awards, Ingrid lost to Jennifer Jones but accepted it with grace. Meanwhile, Peter, now a surgical resident in Los Angeles, continued interfering in her career, prompting a scathing 7-page rebuttal from Selznick. Their ongoing power struggle strained both her marriage and professional relationships. Selznick, eager to keep her engaged, teamed up with Alfred Hitchcock and Ben Hecht on Spellbound, a psychological thriller in which she played a psychoanalyst unraveling a murder mystery. Initially hesitant, Ingrid found the romance unrealistic, but Hitchcock convinced her that film was about emotion, not logic. Their collaboration, beginning in 1944, marked the start of a legendary partnership, though Hitchcock's deep, almost romantic admiration for her remained unreciprocated. The film, with its surreal dream sequences and psychological depth, was a success. During filming, she and Peter bought a new home in Beverly Hills, but their emotional distance grew. Hollywood's rigid social hierarchy frustrated Ingrid. She hosted inclusive gatherings until advised that executives and technicians did not mix. Meanwhile, Peter's controlling nature stifled her independence. Determined to shape her own career, Ingrid fought for the Bells of St. Mary's, playing Sister Benedict opposite Bing Crosby. Immersing herself in research, she brought warmth and humor to the role, which earned her a third consecutive Oscar nomination. However, the public's growing perception of her as a saintly figure unsettled her, as she longed for more complex, challenging roles. Privately, Ingrid's life contrasted sharply with her on-screen image. In June 1945, during a USO tour in Paris, she met war photographer Robert Capa, beginning a passionate affair that lasted 2 years. Their connection provided an escape from her unhappy marriage, though Capa's aversion to commitment left her longing for more. She also grew close to musician Larry Adler, forming another deep yet temporary bond. During her European tour, she rejected high-profile events to dine with enlisted men, personally noting their names to inform their families of their well-being. When soldiers jeered at her performances, she was reduced to tears, until Adler fiercely defended her. In Berlin, both Capa and Adler arrived, creating tension. While Adler understood her situation, Capa remained emotionally distant. Ingrid, hoping for a future together, urged him to move to Hollywood, but his reluctance left her uncertain. Back in Beverly Hills, she resumed domestic life, but her marriage was now purely functional. Hitchcock, sensing her distress, invited her for drinks, where she confided her love for Capa and her deep unhappiness. Drawing from her emotional turmoil, Hitchcock and screenwriter Ben Hecht infused Notorious with themes of trust, betrayal, and longing. Ingrid's portrayal of Alicia Huberman, a woman manipulated by men, longing for love yet trapped by duty, became one of her most powerful performances, mirroring her real-life struggles. With Selznick selling Notorious to RKO, Ingrid was finally free from his control, though Peter continued micromanaging her career. On set, Hitchcock granted her rare creative input, shaping Alicia's emotional journey. Her performance, particularly in scenes of vulnerability and quiet desperation, was among her most nuanced. Hitchcock, unable to express his own feelings for Ingrid, channeled them into the film's themes of longing and manipulation. By late 1945, Ingrid was at her career peak, with multiple box office hits and over 25,000 fan letters weekly. Despite the acclaim, her personal life remained complicated. Her brief romance with Larry Adler ended amicably, while Robert Capa re-entered her life. Their rekindled affair offered an escape, unfolding in secret Malibu rendezvous. Meanwhile, political paranoia was rising in Hollywood, and Ingrid found herself briefly accused of communist ties, a foreshadowing of the era's growing scrutiny of foreign stars. With her Selznick contract behind her, Ingrid sought new challenges. She signed on for Arch of Triumph with Charles Boyer and prepared for her Broadway debut in Joan of Lorraine. Deeply moved by Rossellini's Open City, she longed to work with him, later admitting, "I fell in love with Roberto before knowing him." His raw realism reinforced her disillusionment with Hollywood's artificiality. Arch of Triumph was a disappointment, its heavy-handed direction dulling Ingrid's haunting performance. Meanwhile, her relationship with Capa unraveled under secrecy and his drinking, while Peter, avoiding her entirely, structured their home life around Pia to minimize contact. When Ingrid again asked for a divorce, Peter refused. In October 1946, she arrived in New York for Joan of Lorraine, a lifelong dream. She urged playwright Maxwell Anderson to stay true to Joan's essence and took a stand against segregation in Washington, D.C., reinforcing her principled image. On opening night, Capa sent a single white rose, a quiet farewell to their fading romance. The play debuted on November 18th to overwhelming acclaim, with critics comparing Ingrid to stage legends like Katharine Cornell and Helen Hayes. Her commanding monologues held audiences in silence, marking a new artistic high. Yet despite her success, she was emotionally unraveling. At the opening night party, she withdrew in tears, overwhelmed by exhaustion and uncertainty about her marriage and career. As Joan of Lorraine ran for 6 grueling months, Ingrid won Sweden's highest artistic honor and multiple acting awards, yet struggled with growing dissatisfaction. Her affair with Capa ended in bittersweet final meetings. When he casually hinted at Ingrid's exhaustion to Peter, suspicions arose. Confronted, she confessed, but insisted it was over. This time, it was Peter who asked for a divorce, but Ingrid refused, fearful of what lay ahead. Amid this turmoil, Victor Fleming re-entered her life, pushing to turn Joan of Arc into a film. Their professional collaboration soon became an intense affair, with Fleming seeing her devotion to acting as a parallel to Joan's faith. While drawn to his passion, Ingrid was undergoing a deeper transformation, craving artistic freedom beyond Hollywood's confines. With Joan of Lorraine closing in May 1947, Ingrid left Broadway exhausted but triumphant. Her farewell was personal, inviting fans on stage and gifting bonuses to cast and crew. Returning to Beverly Hills, she found Peter negotiating under Capricorn with Hitchcock, securing a lucrative contract. Yet, success felt hollow. Sitting by the pool one afternoon, she broke down in tears, unable to reconcile her career with her unhappiness. Filming Joan of Arc began in September, but the production spiraled into an overblown spectacle, costing more than Gone with the Wind. RKO's interference diluted its spiritual depth, yet Ingrid's performance remained mesmerizing. Her portrayal of Joan as a deeply human woman struggling with faith captivated audiences. Victor Fleming, in awe, declared, "She is bulletproof." Despite work consuming her, Ingrid's personal turmoil deepened. She spent long hours on set, using rehearsals as an excuse to see Fleming. When Peter caught her in a lie, even her closest friend, Ruth, admitted Ingrid was with someone else. Around the same time, Fleming's wife confronted Peter, urging him to act. Initially, he sought a divorce, but reconsidered when Ingrid suggested having another child as a way to repair their marriage. However, she soon realized it was a hollow attempt to quiet her restlessness. Pia, already yearning for more of her mother's time, made the idea even more implausible. Despite everything, Peter stayed, later admitting, "I lived with that because of her income." Meanwhile, Ingrid was on the verge of a decision that would change her life forever. While in New York, she attended a streetcar named Desire and saw Pesa, Roberto Rossellini's latest film. Its raw storytelling struck a deep chord, reinforcing her admiration for his work. Craving artistic reinvention, she confided in Irene Selznick that she needed a drastic change. That night, she obtained Rossellini's address, unknowingly setting in motion the greatest upheaval of her life. In April, Ingrid received the Women's National Press Club Award from President Truman, using her speech to criticize Hollywood's censorship and its reliance on escapist films. A few weeks later, Arch of Triumph flopped, solidifying her need for a new direction. Encouraged by Peter, she wrote to Rossellini, offering to work with him. "Dear Mr. Rossellini, I saw your films, Open City and Pesa, and enjoyed them very much. If you need a Swedish actress who speaks English very well, who has not forgotten her German, who is not very understandable in French, and who in Italian knows only ti amo, I am ready to come and make a film with you. Best regards, Ingrid Bergman." Wasting no time, he sent an effusive cable to Ingrid, calling her letter the most precious gift, and pledging to do everything possible to make their collaboration a reality. He proposed Stromboli, a film about a woman trapped in an unforgiving world. The story resonated deeply with Ingrid, mirroring her own yearning for escape. They arranged to meet in Paris that August. Delays in Under Capricorn left Ingrid restless in London, filling time with social outings and drinking more than usual. When filming finally began, Hitchcock's insistence on long takes exhausted the cast, even driving Ingrid to tears, the only time she ever broke down on set. Still, her haunting 9-minute confession scene became one of her most powerful performances. In August, Peter and Pia arrived in London before their highly anticipated meeting with Rossellini in Paris. Over an intimate dinner on Ingrid's 33rd birthday, Rossellini captivated her with his artistic vision, and she impulsively committed to Terra di Dio. Peter, wary of Rossellini's reputation, focused on financial negotiations, but Ingrid was already drawn in. Rossellini, known for his chaotic personal life, saw Ingrid as a golden opportunity. While juggling multiple affairs, he set his sights on her, convinced he had won her over, and he was right. Their fateful collaboration was in motion, though neither fully grasped the scandal it would unleash. Back in London, Hitchcock sensed a change in Ingrid, though she downplayed it. Under Capricorn wrapped in September, and she returned to Sweden for a grand homecoming, keeping her connection to Rossellini quiet. The Joan of Arc premiere in New York marked a final farewell with Victor Fleming. Despite its stunning visuals, the film received lukewarm reviews, furthering Ingrid's disillusionment with Hollywood. By the end of 1948, her recent films, Arch of Triumph, Joan of Arc, and Under Capricorn, had all underperformed. Feeling increasingly disconnected from Hollywood, she turned to Rossellini's letters for reassurance. In December, she confirmed her commitment to Stromboli, fully aware it would change her life forever. As tensions with Peter escalated, Ingrid found solace in the idea of reinvention. Tragedy struck in early 1949 when Victor Fleming died suddenly, leaving her devastated. Days later, Rossellini arrived in Hollywood, and Peter, sensing an opportunity, encouraged her to host him. Rossellini's arrival captivated Ingrid. At a Hollywood party, he ignored industry elites, focusing entirely on her. Within days, he confessed his love, offering passion and spontaneity unlike Peter's rigid control. Meanwhile, he abandoned his longtime lover, Anna Magnani, without warning. Despite his erratic filmmaking, Ingrid saw him as an artistic escape. Determined to make Terra de Dio, Ingrid sought funding, securing a deal with Howard Hughes, who demanded she return to Hollywood afterward. When news of the project spread, Magnani retaliated by launching a rival film, Volcano. Rossellini, oblivious to the brewing scandal, charmed Ingrid with grand gestures, including borrowing money from Peter to buy Pia a giant stuffed cow. On March 11th, Ingrid left for Rome, joking to Irene Selznick that she was the fallen star. While many believed she had abandoned her family, her letters revealed a different perspective. She saw Rossellini as an adventure, not an escape. Arriving in Italy, she was greeted as a sensation. When Hughes tipped off the press, a media frenzy ensued, forcing Rossellini to punch photographers before whisking Ingrid away. Days later, they escaped to the Amalfi Coast, but their peace was short-lived. Life magazine published a photo of them hand in hand, likening the scandal to King Edward VIII and Wallis Simpson. Realizing the consequences, Ingrid took decisive action. On April 3rd, from a historic hotel, she penned a final letter to Peter, acknowledging the pain she had caused. "I know how this letter falls like a bomb on our house, but I am unable to help you." Rossellini also requested an amicable divorce, but the damage was done. Peter was humiliated and refused to let her go easily. On April 4th, Ingrid and Rossellini set sail for Stromboli, where the film and their future would take shape. The volcanic island was harsher than she expected, mirroring her character's isolation. She lived simply, showering in seawater, eating food shipped from the mainland, and enduring grueling stunts on sharp rocks and sulfurous fumes. As rumors of their affair spread, reporters swarmed Stromboli. Peter arrived in Italy, publicly claiming to be sightseeing, but privately confronting Ingrid. They met in Messina for a painful conversation, while Rossellini, consumed with jealousy, paced outside, even threatening suicide. Peter, refusing a quick divorce, prolonged the separation to make her suffer. Pia, caught between them, became collateral damage. Had Peter agreed to an amicable split, much of the scandal might have been avoided. Instead, the dragged-out process fueled media hysteria. Howard Hughes capitalized on the controversy, marketing Stromboli with an image of Ingrid beside an erupting volcano, symbolizing the turmoil of her life. Time magazine published fantasy on the Black Island, portraying Stromboli's crater as purgatory, a fitting metaphor for Ingrid's predicament. On June 6, 1949, Ingrid learned she was pregnant. That same evening, Stromboli's volcano erupted, covering the island in ash. The disaster prevented her from meeting Peter in London, keeping him unaware of the pregnancy. Instead, publicists framed her absence as exhaustion, shielding the truth. Meanwhile, Peter's letters emphasized his deepening bond with Pia, leaving Ingrid in doubt. She questioned if she and Rossellini had made a terrible mistake, but he reassured her, no parent loses a child who does not wish to be lost. Yet Pia, caught between feuding parents and relentless media scrutiny, felt abandoned. Ingrid had naively believed in a civilized divorce, never anticipating the full consequences. In 1949, society was far less forgiving of women who defied traditional roles. Later, stars like Madonna or Catherine Deneuve would have children outside marriage without backlash, but Ingrid, once Hollywood's saint, was now its fallen angel. "I didn't know I belonged to the American people," she later reflected, "that everyone had a right to tell me what to do." Condemnation was swift. Hollywood's morality enforcer Joseph Breen warned that America was in profound shock. Producer Walter Wanger scolded her for dishonoring Joan of Arc and Victor Fleming's memory. Ironically, Wanger would later shoot his wife's lover and stage a cover-up. Meanwhile, as Stromboli neared completion, fate seemed to conspire against Ingrid. She nearly miscarried after slipping on volcanic rock. A crew member died of exhaustion, and financial troubles mounted. Her salary was frozen due to IRS liens, and Rossellini, supporting an extensive network of family and ex-lovers, was drowning in debt. On August 5th, Ingrid broke her silence, announcing her retirement and divorce plans. The Los Angeles Times ran the explosive headline, "Ingrid to divorce mate, quit films." The media frenzy intensified. Rossellini filed for an annulment from his wife, Marcella, and on Ingrid's 34th birthday, they were serenaded in Rome, where she was embraced as one of Italy's own. But her divorce with Peter turned bitter when a lawyer leaked details to the press. Enraged, Peter retaliated with harsh financial demands, including half of Stromboli's earnings and full custody of Pia. Rossellini, already deeply in debt, was furious. Worse, Ingrid was 3 months pregnant. If revealed, it could destroy the film's box office and further fuel the scandal. Howard Hughes, ever the opportunist, leaked the pregnancy to gossip queen Luella Parsons. On December 12th, the Los Angeles Examiner confirmed it, triggering an unprecedented moral outcry. The same public that had adored her as Sister Benedict and Joan of Arc now vilified her. Some, like Cary Grant and Hitchcock, offered support, but this time America did not forget. By January 1950, Ingrid was a virtual prisoner in her Roman apartment, hounded by reporters. On February 2nd, she gave birth to her son, Robertino. That same night, Magnani's revenge film Volcano premiered in chaos. Photographers mistook random dark-haired women for Magnani, and the projector broke mid-screening, forcing Rossellini's cousin to tap dance on stage to distract the audience. Meanwhile, news of Robertino's birth eclipsed major world events, dominating headlines for 2 weeks. The media siege reached absurd levels. Reporters bribed nurses, scaled hospital walls, and swarmed the clinic. Italian nuns deflected questions with cheeky literalism. "No, Miss Bergman is here," since Ingrid had checked in under a pseudonym. Even Swedish newspapers turned against her, though some, like Expressen, defended her against moral hypocrisy. Italian officials initially listed her son's mother as unknown due to her still married status. As Stromboli neared release, the backlash intensified. Religious leaders and conservative groups launched boycotts, with Georgia banning all her films and a Los Angeles minister calling her a stench in the nostrils of decent people. Women's clubs petitioned theaters to cancel screenings, and even the Salvation Army removed her charity recordings. Yet, while American Catholics led the charge against her, the Vatican remained silent, and the National Legion of Decency approved Stromboli for public viewing. RKO released Stromboli on February 15, 1950, but it flopped. Critics called it feeble and uninspiring, and audiences swayed by the scandal largely rejected it. While some theaters screened it in defiance of censorship, many canceled showings under public pressure. With the film failing, Ingrid's divorce took center stage. Frustrated by Peter's delays, she and Rossellini pursued a Mexican divorce, but Peter contested its validity, dragging out the battle further. Once Hollywood's most revered actress, Ingrid was now its greatest outcast. On March 14, 1950, Senator Edwin C. Johnson delivered a scathing speech condemning Stromboli and Ingrid's affair, calling her a free love cultist and proposing moral licenses for Hollywood figures. Though his bill never passed, Ingrid was effectively exiled from the U.S. The worst consequence was losing Pia. "The worst part of the whole business," she later admitted, was having to hurt my daughter. As McCarthyism gripped Hollywood, her fall became a national obsession. On May 24, 1950, Ingrid and Rossellini married by proxy in Mexico, later exchanging rings privately in Rome. They settled in Santa Marinella, living extravagantly despite financial instability. Rossellini's reckless spending clashed with Ingrid's frugality, and his controlling nature soon surfaced. He barred her from working with directors like Fellini or Visconti. Yet in Italy, they were embraced. At the Venice Film Festival, Stromboli and the Flowers of St. Francis were well received, restoring some of Roberto's artistic prestige. Meanwhile, Peter won their divorce case, painting himself as a betrayed husband. Ingrid, eager to see Pia, conceded to all terms. He retained full custody, their home, and Pia's trust, while she was granted only summer visits. At Christmas, she tried to maintain a connection, sending Pia a delicate wristwatch, only to learn it had been lost in a doghouse. She joked, "The dogs know what time it is," but the moment stung deeply. Roberto's unchecked spending continued, lavishing money on family, friends, and race cars. Their home in Rome was lively, filled with artists and intellectuals, yet he was often absent, leaving Ingrid to host dinners alone. By 1951, cracks in their marriage were widening. That year, Peter reluctantly allowed Pia a supervised visit in London, but after only 3 days, he ended it abruptly, leaving Ingrid devastated. Meanwhile, Roberto struggled to fund Europa 51, and when production finally began, his chaotic style made filming grueling. Exhausted and missing Robertino, Ingrid found unexpected joy in discovering she was pregnant again. By early 1952, her career was stagnating. Rossellini's films flopped, and her relationship with Pia deteriorated. Pregnant with twins, she petitioned for a visit with Pia in Italy, but Peter's legal team argued it would harm the child. Under his influence, Pia declared she didn't love her mother, and Ingrid's request was denied. She wouldn't see Pia again until 1957. On June 18, 1952, Ingrid gave birth to twin daughters, Isabella and Ingrid. While devoted to her children, she remained trapped under Roberto's control. His possessiveness isolated her from Hollywood, and his temper sometimes turned violent, once throwing her against a wall in anger. Her world had shifted. Once, Pia had seemed an obstacle to her career. Now, her children in Italy were her refuge. As Rossellini directed Otello, Ingrid found fulfillment in performing Joan of Arc at the stake, though she remained under his dominance. By 1953, Voyage in Italy, a meditative look at a crumbling marriage starring Ingrid and George Sanders, faced a chaotic production. Initially dismissed, it later gained recognition as an early inspiration for the French New Wave. Meanwhile, Rossellini's comedic short We, the Women, was a rare success, showcasing Ingrid's humor. His ambitious stage adaptation of Joan of Arc at the stake earned praise in Italy, but struggled elsewhere. When Hollywood offered Ingrid roles, Rossellini blocked them, forcing her into his declining projects. In 1954, Fear, a psychological drama, had promise but ultimately failed, marking the end of their professional collaborations. That year, Ingrid silently grieved the sudden death of Robert Capa, knowing Rossellini's jealousy made mourning impossible. Touring Joan of Arc at the stake in London and Stockholm, Ingrid faced cruel attacks from Swedish critics, particularly Stig Ahlgren, who mocked her career and family. At a charity event, she finally defended herself, condemning the media's cruelty. The audience erupted in cheers, but the backlash left her emotionally drained. The fairy tale of Ingrid and Rossellini was beginning to crumble. As Ingrid's marriage with Rossellini unraveled, she longed to reclaim her career. Offered tea and sympathy in Paris, Roberto dismissed it as trash and expected her to stay home. Restless and frustrated by their financial struggles, she accepted Elena et les Hommes, a structured, light-hearted film by Jean Renoir, a stark contrast to Rossellini's chaotic directing style. Meanwhile, Hollywood was preparing her grand return with Anastasia, a role that mirrored her own fall and potential redemption. When Ingrid signed for Anastasia in December 1955, Roberto exploded, seeing it as a betrayal. His own career floundered, and after being dismissed from Sea Wife, his resentment grew. he threatened to take their children, retreating to Santa Marinella with Robertino, Isabella, and Ingrid Jr. Despite her terror at the prospect of losing her children, Ingrid pushed forward with Anastasia, delivering a stunning performance, though American audiences remained divided. As Anastasia wrapped, Ingrid prepared for tea and sympathy. Their marriage, held together only for the children, was unraveling. After a triumphant premiere, Roberto mocked her from backstage and stormed off to Rome, convinced the play would fail. It ran for 9 sold-out months. That night, Ingrid knew their marriage was over. Amid her turmoil, playwright Robert Anderson, grieving his wife's death, became Ingrid's lover. Their bond, born from shared sorrow, was tender but fleeting. Meanwhile, Roberto, now in India, ignited a scandal with screenwriter Sonali Dasgupta. The press hounded Ingrid, but she responded with quiet irony. Now it is Roberto in a foreign land with a collaborator-turned-lover. Rather than dwell on humiliation, she celebrated Anastasia's overwhelming success. America had finally forgiven her. Regaining confidence, Ingrid indulged in a rare extravagance, purchasing a Renoir painting. Financially, she remained unstable, but her independence was returning. Hollywood offers poured in, including Kind Sir with Cary Grant. Around this time, she met Swedish producer Lars Schmidt, whose steady presence provided the stability she craved. Her return to America for the New York Film Critics Circle Award was her first visit in 8 years. Facing the press, she stood by her choices. "I have never regretted what I did. I regret the things I didn't do." New York embraced her, though rumors swirled about her not seeing Pia. In truth, she kept their reunion private, opting for a phone call rather than a media spectacle. On March 27, 1957, Ingrid won her second Academy Award for Anastasia. Cary Grant accepted on her behalf, delivering a warm tribute. She later laughed about hearing the news half asleep, then catching Cary's voice on the radio while in the bathtub. Meanwhile, irony struck. Roberto, still in India, warned her of an impending scandal. Days later, the press confirmed his affair with Sonali, now pregnant with his child. That summer, Pia, now 18, visited Ingrid in Paris for the first time in 6 years. Their reunion was tentative, strained by time and distance, yet Pia later admitted she found a sense of family with her half-siblings. Shortly after, Ingrid agreed to star in Indiscreet with Cary Grant, needing the salary to settle tax debts. Meanwhile, Roberto, financially drained, sent only bills for Ingrid to cover. On October 1st, Ingrid's past came full circle when Sonali arrived at her hotel, pregnant and seeking reassurance. Days later, Roberto returned to Paris for a staged reunion, but privately, they discussed separation. On November 7th, their legal separation was finalized, with Ingrid keeping custody of their children. Despite everything, Ingrid helped Roberto one last time. When the Indian government seized his film due to unpaid debts, she personally appealed to Prime Minister Nehru, securing its release within 24 hours. It was her final act of closure. At last, she was free. Ingrid's legal separation from Rossellini was complicated by Italy's ban on divorce, but a legal loophole revealed her marriage had never been properly registered in Sweden, rendering it technically invalid. This ensured her children's legitimacy, and by 1958, she regained Swedish citizenship, fully closing that chapter of her life. Resilient despite the turmoil, Ingrid returned to London to film Indiscreet with Cary Grant, showcasing her comedic brilliance. Meanwhile, Rossellini fought for full custody of their children. The Italian court sided with him, forcing Ingrid to accept the ruling rather than drag them through another public battle. As her relationship with Lars Schmidt deepened, she found a love built on mutual respect and freedom. Unlike her previous marriages, Lars did not seek to control her. Hollywood sought her return, offering a record-breaking $1 million contract, but Ingrid declined, choosing personal freedom over studio control. She and Lars found solace in Danholmen, a remote Swedish island where she finally experienced the peace she had long sought. In 1958, she starred in The Inn of the Sixth Happiness, reluctantly accepting another saintly role but infusing it with depth and strength. The film resonated with audiences, cementing her Hollywood redemption. That December, Ingrid and Lars married privately in London, later celebrating in France. Though Rossellini refused to finalize their separation, English law recognized the union. The following year, her custody battle dragged on as Rossellini kept the children in Italy. Realizing the fight was harming them, she conceded, choosing peace over prolonged legal battles. In April 1959, Ingrid returned to Hollywood for the first time in a decade, receiving an emotional standing ovation at the Academy Awards. Overwhelmed by the warmth, she simply said, "I feel that I am home." The moment marked her full acceptance back into the industry. She embraced television, starring in The Turn of the Screw, earning an Emmy for her performance. In 1960, she was shocked to learn that Pia, now 21, had eloped in Nevada. The marriage ended quickly, further straining their already fragile relationship. Meanwhile, Ingrid pursued The Visit, a dark drama, but production delays left her restless. She took on Goodbye Again, portraying a woman torn between two loves. The film showcased her depth, though rumors of on-set affairs swirled. Ingrid dismissed the gossip, remaining devoted to Lars. As Hollywood shifted, strong roles for women her age dwindled. She turned to television, starring in 24 Hours and A Woman's Life, though the production left her uninspired. She waited for meaningful work, relying on Lars's steady support. In 1961, a rare moment of peace came at Dan Holman with all 4 children by her side. However, the deaths of close friends Gary Cooper and Ernest Hemingway cast a shadow over the summer. After years of delays, The Visit moved forward, but was weakened by production changes. Disappointed, Ingrid sought new challenges, becoming the first Scandinavian actress to perform Hedda Gabler in French. Despite struggles, her performance earned praise. In 1964, she traveled through Asia before returning to film The Yellow Rolls-Royce, blending comedy and drama. She also reunited with Swedish director Gustav Melander for The Necklace, a short film that marked a rare reconciliation with Swedish critics. By Christmas, Ingrid was back in Rome, caring for the Rossellini children during a flu outbreak. Pia, now 26, had become a steady presence in both her parents' lives, managing Rossellini's household while searching for her own path. Exhausted, but still driven, Ingrid accepted the role of Natalia in A Month in the Country. The stage offered her the artistic fulfillment she craved, though it strained her marriage with Lars. Ever restless, she prioritized her career, knowing the audience had always been her greatest love. In 1965, Ingrid turned 50, celebrating with laughter and grace at Dan Holman. That year, A Month in the Country moved to London, where she delivered some of her most acclaimed performances. However, her world shifted when her daughter Isabella was diagnosed with severe scoliosis. Doctors warned of a long, painful treatment process that could determine whether she would walk again. Ingrid put her career on hold for nearly 2 years, dedicating herself entirely to Isabella's recovery. She and Rossellini, despite their past, united in their concern, pacing anxiously through her surgery and months of grueling rehabilitation. During this period, Ingrid briefly returned to work in The Human Voice, a one-woman monologue that reflected her own emotional turmoil. Initially plagued by insecurity, she pushed through with the help of director Ted Kotcheff. When it aired in 1967, critics hailed her raw, emotionally charged performance as a triumph. By mid-1967, with Isabella recovering, Ingrid turned her focus to her career. She accepted the lead in More Stately Mansions, marking her return to the American stage. Despite tense rehearsals and clashes with director Jose Quintero, her performance captivated audiences. The Los Angeles run was a success, but Broadway's reception was harsher, with critics divided on her interpretation. Still, the play turned a profit, and Ingrid took the criticism in stride, maintaining her warm camaraderie with the cast. In 1969, Ingrid returned to Hollywood for Cactus Flower, embracing comedy for the first time in decades. She bonded with co-stars Walter Matthau and Goldie Hawn, mentoring the young actress who won an Oscar. That year, she also presented the historic Best Actress tie between Katharine Hepburn and Barbra Streisand at the Academy Awards with grace and humor. Following this, she filmed A Walk in the Spring Rain, but its lukewarm reception frustrated her as Hollywood increasingly favored younger stars. Her personal life took a painful turn when Lars Schmidt confessed he had fallen for a younger woman and wanted another child. Heartbroken but unwilling to wait in limbo, Ingrid threw herself into work, accepting Captain Brassbound's conversion in London. The light-hearted Shaw comedy was a success, running for 9 months and reconnecting her with old friends, including Alfred Hitchcock. Family remained central. In December 1971, she attended Pia's second wedding, maintaining a civil but distant relationship with Peter Lindstrom. The following year, while touring Captain Brassbound's conversion across North America, she experienced a moment of redemption when Senator Charles Percy publicly apologized for the Senate's past condemnation of her. Ingrid accepted with characteristic grace, acknowledging that her wounds had finally healed. In 1973, she presided over the Cannes Film Festival jury, playfully reminding Ingmar Bergman of his long-standing promise to collaborate. That fall, she starred in The Constant Wife, a witty play about female independence. It became a hit, running for 8 months and earning her a substantial profit. However, her success was overshadowed by personal losses, including the death of Anna Magnani, which deeply affected her, despite their past tensions over Rossellini. One evening after a performance, Ingrid discovered a lump in her breast. Alarmed but unwilling to abandon her commitment to the play, she delayed seeking medical attention. Dr. David Handley urged an immediate biopsy, but she prioritized work, accepting a role in Murder on the Orient Express. Choosing a small but powerful part, she delivered a single-take monologue that earned her an unexpected 3rd Academy Award. Filming wrapped in early 1974, but by then, the lump had grown. Ingrid finally underwent a radical mastectomy, keeping her illness private as she endured radiation and recovery. Despite her health struggles, she remained resilient, continuing to work with the same quiet determination that had defined her life. Refusing to let cancer define her, Ingrid embarked on a 5-month U.S. tour of The Constant Wife in early 1975, performing even after breaking 2 foot bones. Following The Constant Wife, Ingrid starred in A Matter of Time, 1975, opposite Liza Minnelli. While she enjoyed the eccentric role, the troubled production resulted in a lackluster film. Meanwhile, she reconciled with Roberto Rossellini, and their quiet dinners in Rome reflected a friendship forged through shared history. Despite past tensions, she also maintained a civil relationship with Lars and Pia, though Peter remained distant, resenting her memoir My Story, 1980. Ingrid reluctantly agreed to write My Story, but the process was frustrating due to errors and her collaborator's alcoholism. The book received moderate success, but left her dissatisfied. That same year, she hosted a heartfelt 70th birthday celebration for Roberto, reuniting him with family and friends. Shortly after, her marriage to Lars ended quietly as he prepared for fatherhood with his new partner, Christina. Ingrid, now living at the Raphael Hotel in Paris, sought solace in work, accepting Waters of the Moon at the Chichester Theatre Festival. Her return to the stage in Waters of the Moon, 1977, was a success, but personal tragedy struck when Roberto died of a heart attack in June. That same week, Lars welcomed a new son, further underscoring the shifting chapters of her life. Despite grief, she continued to perform, and the play transferred to London's Haymarket Theatre. Around this time, Ingmar Bergman finally offered her Autumn Sonata, a role that would define the final phase of her career. Filming began in September 1977, but Ingrid struggled with the script, initially finding her character, Charlotte, too cold. Clashing with Ingmar and an emotional Liv Ullmann, she eventually recognized painful parallels between Charlotte's choices and her own sacrifices, shaping the role into one of devastating emotional depth. A week into filming, a trip to London confirmed her cancer had returned. She told no one, pushing through the grueling shoot. Despite her illness, she earned her 7th Oscar nomination. Afterward, she secretly underwent another mastectomy and radiation, keeping her struggles private. Only co-star Wendy Hiller knew the truth as Ingrid continued to perform Waters of the Moon with unwavering humor and strength. In March 1979, she hosted the AFI tribute to Alfred Hitchcock, elegantly concealing her illness. In a sentimental moment, she presented him with the key from Notorious, which Cary Grant had kept for years. Later that year, she presented home movies of her childhood at a Casablanca tribute, reflecting with warmth on her storied life. As her health declined, she continued embracing life, visiting Hitchcock in his final days. In December 1979, she spent a quiet New Year's Eve with Anne Todd, acknowledging her mortality with resilience. Every day that I challenge this cancer and survive, it's a little victory. Despite her fading strength, she remained graceful and pragmatic, refusing self-pity. By early 1980, doctors forbade her from returning to the Royal Dramatic Theatre in Stockholm, recognizing her body was failing. More friends passed, including Hitchcock in April. Torn between attending his funeral or avoiding media attention, she chose the latter, honoring him instead with a Notorious screening at the Museum of Modern Art in October. Despite her declining health, she carried on, facing each day with quiet courage. Despite her failing health, Ingrid completed her memoir, My Story, touring across Europe and the US, facing questions about her condition with characteristic candor. When offered the role of Golda Meir, she initially laughed it off but saw deep parallels between their lives. She agreed to the role on one condition: a screen test. Nervous but flawless, she won the part. Filming A Woman Called Golda in Israel was grueling. Cancer had spread, and her swollen arm, which she jokingly called her puppy dog, was painful, but she refused special treatment. She worked long hours, pushing through exhaustion with unwavering dedication. In one powerful scene where Golda learns of her illness, Ingrid delivered her lines in a single take, moving the crew to tears. Her final scene was plagued by technical failures, delaying the farewell shot. Smiling through exhaustion, she quipped, "See, the camera doesn't want to say goodbye to me either." Alone that night, she wept for the film, her life, and her final goodbye to the camera. Shortly before Christmas 1981, she announced her retirement. "I have finished with acting. Now I will travel the world and play with my grandchildren." Her health declined rapidly. Refusing to be homebound, she still hosted suppers and attended the theater. Chemotherapy left her paralyzed in one arm, but her humor endured. "Now that I've played Golda, I can sit here and study Mrs. Thatcher for my next role." In April 1982, A Woman Called Golda premiered to acclaim, hailed as her final masterpiece. In June, she traveled to New York for her twins' 30th birthday, masking her pain with laughter, even keeping her tradition of a hair appointment at Bergdorf's. In July, she revisited memories, books, letters, and photos of the people who had shaped her life. In August, she made a final pilgrimage to Stockholm and Danholmen, retracing her youth. Too weak to walk, she forced herself to reach her favorite boulder, gazing at the sea where she asked Lars to scatter her ashes. Returning to London on August 27th, Ingrid was exhausted. On August 29th, her 67th birthday, she dressed and added a touch of color. She spent the day surrounded by loved ones, sipping champagne before requesting to be taken to bed. Beside her lay the little prince, open to a marked passage. "I shall look as if I were dead, but that will not be true." Ingrid Bergman passed away peacefully on August 29, 1982, surrounded by loved ones. Though scandals once shaped her public image, her true legacy is one of resilience, talent, and unwavering dedication to her craft. She was neither a saint nor a villain, just a woman who lived on her own terms, accepting the consequences that came with it. So, what are your thoughts on the life of Ingrid Bergman? Are you a fan of her films? And how do you feel about the way the press treated her during the height of her scandal? Was the backlash too severe, or do you think it was justified given the time period? I'd love to hear your perspective on her journey, her legacy, and the impact she left on cinema. As always, thank you for watching. Until next time, keep seeking the stories that move your soul.